Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I got a bit teary listening to the member for Sydney then. It is amazing how in this place we have managed to turn something as passionate and personal and as love into something known as the Miscellaneous Acts Amendment Marriage Bill. But congratulations to us. Congratulations to us for getting something that is about such joy and personal hope into the most bureaucratic sounding bill we have ever seen. I acknowledge that while it might sound a little tedious, the name of the bill, it is truly wonderful to be here in this chamber with the member for Sydney to hear people from all sides of this chamber and all political stripes talking in support of marriage equality and these important changes to the births, deaths and marriages and many other pieces of legislation to enact the reality of marriage equality in the state of New South Wales. The Greens are highly supportive of this bill as it brings New South Wales into line with Commonwealth law in realising marriage equality across this country. As of December 2017, marriage in Australia was recognised as between two people regardless of their sex or gender, and however, gender-specific language used in current New South Wales law means that marriage equality has not been a reality for many, and this legislation enables us to catch up and to do what is required to deliver full marriage equality across this state and the country. The Greens' position was always clear that New South Wales law needed to catch up with Commonwealth law, and that is what we have seen. I wrote with my Greens federal Senate colleague Janet Rice to the Premier back in February, urging her to take on board the celebration that had occurred with the result around marriage equality being achieved, the massive support for the Yes campaign, and actually enact changes in New South Wales law, and it is wonderful that we are here today doing that. What we know is that there are many things in relation to marriage equality and the debate around this issue that had huge impacts on the community, on the LGBTIQ community, and on many of their families and friends and loved ones. The sad reality is that we never needed that divisive postal vote. We knew, and we passed with unanimous support in this chamber, a motion in support of calling on our federal colleagues to act and to make those changes themselves. And sadly, so many people, some of them absolute leaders in the LGBTIQ community, are still suffering from the hurt and damage and hate that they had to face during that divisive postal survey. But can I just say to all of those people that sometimes you win, and this time you have won. It is a truly phenomenal thing to know that we have realised marriage equality, not just in this state but in this country, and that those people will now be able to celebrate their love living free from discrimination. We know that discrimination and fear in our society from being seen as different, from being identified as different, is particularly harmful for young people, and we've heard those stats from the member for Sydney in relation to the impact it has on young LGBTIQ and gender questioning people, and it is important that we can do everything that we can to remove discrimination out of our laws. I wanted to talk briefly in relation to, and the member for Sydney acknowledged the work that my Greens colleague Marine Faruqi did in 2014, introducing a bill that would address some of these changes. I wanted to talk also about a commitment that I make in this chamber today to work with the member for Sydney and anybody else that is listening to this that is part of this chamber or the other place, to be able to advance the much needed additional reforms that are needed for trans rights and trans law reform in this state. What we know is that New South Wales law currently requires a trans person to undergo surgical intervention before they are eligible to change their gender on their birth certificate. We note that this bill does not seek to remove this requirement, but we do note that many organisations are concerned about the impact that this is having, and this goes beyond the issue of marriage to fundamental rights about people being able to live free from discrimination and free to be able to be identified as who they want to be identified as without the need for surgical intervention. I note the Human Rights Law Centre, in a briefing provided to many in this place, has identified that this bill does not remove the other legal barriers to recognition of legal sex and gender in the Birth, Deaths and Marriages Act, which includes surgery and medical evidence requirements, limited sex and gender categories, and not being available for under 18s. It is important that we make a commitment as people that represent the diversity of communities in New South Wales to address issues of law where people are feeling like they are being excluded, they are being discriminated against, or they are being caused further hurt or harm as a result of bureaucratic decisions, of bureaucratic processes that are not allowing them to be able to live the lives and be recognised for the people that they are. And I give my commitment today to work with the member for Sydney and across party lines to make sure that we address these concerns as the priority. It is one of the most wonderful things, in addition to all of the wedding bells that we have seen ring, or maybe there's not so many wedding bells because they're maybe not happening in churches. That's my Adelaide heritage speaking there. It's the city of churches, as you know. But one of the things that is really amazing about seeing the amazing marriages happening across the country is it also gives us the space now to work with the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex and queer communities to look at the other reforms that are needed. We need reforms to our anti-discrimination laws in this state. They need to be updated and caught up. We need to look at trans law reform, and we need to look at other areas of discrimination where it comes to religious exemptions, when it comes to the issue of people being able to discriminate against people on the basis of their sex, gender. Those things need to be addressed, and it's something that I and the Greens are committed to pushing on and committed to delivering, because we cannot just celebrate marriage equality without recognising that there are other forms of equality that we need to achieve and look at to end discrimination. I want to read out the comments from Ms Page from Trans Health Australia, who's the spokesperson, who said that Australia still has a long way to go before discrimination against trans people was removed. This step in the right direction, but trans people are still required to undergo invasive surgery before they can change their legal sex. Much more reform is needed to bring birth certificate laws in Victoria and New South Wales and many other states in line with best practice around the world, and I give a commitment to work to make sure that we advance that today. I wanted to end with a final personal note to say thank you to Senator Janet Rice, Green Senator, who has carriage of this portfolio area in the federal parliament, but also to Janet's partner Penny. It is perhaps the most moving and extreme situation to have to be the person advocating for law change when it has a direct impact on your personal circumstances. And the way that Janet and Penny have been tirelessly campaigning for marriage equality, for these changes, when these changes that are made, similar ones in Victoria, are made to enable their relationship, their marriage to be recognised in law, is something that is incredibly powerful, and we should give absolute credit and support to them for the amazing efforts they have done to be campaigning so publicly on something that impacts them, not just on principled and political grounds, but also on very personal grounds. So an absolute tribute to them for their tireless efforts. And I would like to end by saying that it is absolutely wonderful to be in this chamber with the member for Sydney. He has shown absolute leadership on the issue of marriage equality. He has been much more patient with the political argy-bargies than I think I would have ever been able to be able to deliver this change and this law. It is an absolute honour to have been part of this campaign, to campaign for yes, to achieve marriage equality. I remember way back when being heckled by the gay and lesbian rights lobby when I was a Greens candidate because I was talking about marriage equality, and apparently I wasn't supposed to be talking about marriage equality because Labor wasn't committed to marriage equality, and so the Greens were showing up Labor's hypocrisy. All these years later, it's very good to know that we're all on the same page, that we have achieved that. I won't stand at the Newtown Hotel upstairs anymore and be heckled by the lobby or anyone else for campaigning for marriage equality as I was back in 2004. It seems that this change has happened, and I look forward with absolute pleasure to be pushing the agenda, which is what the Greens do, on identifying the next change and the next changes we need in our law, and everyone shouting me down and telling me that I'm being unrealistic and this change will never happen, and then seeing them happen a decade later. I look forward to being heckled for the next reform we put forward.